Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
So, I haven't been up here to do this in a few weeks. Do I remember how? I was on vacation 3 weeks ago. I was speaking at Unity Austin 2 weeks ago, and then last week I was a part of a panel, so I didn't have to write a talk. And I had 3 different things I was doing for Unity yesterday. It's like, do I know what I'm doing? So we'll find out in about 25 minutes. You'll be able to tell me if I still know how to do this. But I go back to the basics, and I was taught by my good friend Jerry, Reverend Jerry Roberts, retired minister from Unity of the Woodlands, who was trained Methodist a long time ago, and he said, they taught me 3 points, a joke, and a poem. So that's what you're getting today. Joke first. There is a new-ish social media site called Threads. I think it's kind of the nicer, kinder version of Twitter. And there's an account there. It's called Overheard in New York. Does anybody ever go to New York? I love New York. It's like the most urbanly dense population. I mean, people are all over you. It's everywhere. But if you listen out on the street, there's this thing called theater of the street. You start to hear what people are saying, and you're in a restaurant. You're right next to other people. And so this is called Overheard in New York. These are real things. The girl says, I can't believe I'm crying right now. This is so embarrassing. And her friend says, well, at least these people don't think you're a tourist. No one visiting New York cries, only the people who live here. And this is my favorite. And I told her that ordering this side salad instead of the fries would make her sad. Now look who has to pick up the pieces, me. I love humanity. So my 3 points, well, let me kind of summarize them. It's bad news, good news, and really, really good news. That's what I want to talk about today. The bad news being that song that Tony just sang to us. Everything will change. Everything. Anything that has a name or you can point to it or describe it, that's what we're calling a form. It's temporary. All form is temporary. And that's actually not the part that's the bad news. The bad news is that we get attached. So I'll come back to that. The good news is the truth of who we are is the unchanging, birthless, deathless, changeless spirit. That's what we are. The good news is that we can live more and more from that truth, and then we can navigate the changes of life better. And the really good news, I'm going to save that. When you get there, I think you'll be so happy you stayed around till the end of this talk. So what am I going to talk about? Let's go back to, so the first time I heard this is an original sutra from the Buddha himself. So millennia ago, this was taught to his original students. And when I first heard it, I read it. A friend of mine who is Buddhist emailed it to me, and I said, well, that's a bummer. I'm glad I'm not Buddhist. But I have grown to appreciate this teaching. So remember, we're in the quote, bad news portion. But I invite you just to hear this teaching. This is called the 5 Remembrances. The first, I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no escape to ill health. The third, I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. The fourth, all that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. And the final, my actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. And my actions are the ground upon which I stand. How does that feel? It's really quiet in here. That's what I notice. Especially the second one, I'm of the nature to have ill health. That is not what we teach in Unity, is it? Is there anybody in here who has never experienced a cold or some sickness? Anyone? Guess what? It is part of our nature in humanity that we do experience these things. Now, what we teach in unity is that we have the capacity, which is really where I'm getting to in my third point today, to transform conditions from the power of the mind of God within us. But everybody I know, and I know people that really practice unity teachings, new thought principles, and they still go through stuff. The point is not that if you come here and you learn how to do your affirmations, you learn how to pray in this way from that mind of Christ within, we begin to shift our lives and our experiences around finance and health and relationships and our vocation and our contribution to the world. It doesn't mean that you're not going to still go through tough things, because you are. But it changes how we navigate the changes of life. That's the point of this. Philosophically, what we would understand, we come from a non-dual perspective, and we're rare in the Christian world to have this teaching. Almost all of the Western religions are dualistic in nature. That's Judaism, Hinduism, and Christianity. No, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Hinduism and Buddhism are non-dual. Those are the 5 great religions, as they're usually counted. There are many, many other religions. Some are dualistic, some are non-dualistic. But we kind of are in this beautiful space that we are in the household of Christianity, and yet we are non-dual. It's like we have this doorway open to the Eastern traditions as well. And it changes everything. Changes everything. That when we understand this place, that spirit, the one true reality, God is the word I use, and I promise you, if that word makes you mad because some God did you wrong, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, that's the biggest word I know for all that exists in potentiality and in form and in creative process, all that is seen and unseen, the mystery. That's what I mean by God. But this thing, this infinitely loving presence and power, has within itself this desire to create, to pour itself into creation. Ernest Holmes defines love as the self-givingness of spirit into form. It wants to be something. It wants to be a Mindy. It wants to be a Joey. It wants to be a Michael. It wants to be the Grand Canyon. It wants to be the Milky Way galaxy. It simply must give itself clothing, form, a body. And yet, the essential nature of spirit is unchanged by its givingness, but all form that it gives itself into comes to pass. It comes into being, and it stops being. It returns. The essence of it returns to the one. In Buddhism, again, they talk about the ocean and the waves. Each of us could be described as a wave upon an infinite ocean. We have definite form and shape and movement and speed, and we can watch those waves as they come into the shore, and then they go back to be a part of the ocean. This is a very different way of understanding reality from the Christianity I grew up with. And what I have found, it took me a while. I'm slow. It took me a while to begin to see how this can change the way I interact with people. This can change the way I begin to understand just how important I am. Not very, really. Valued and loved by life itself, but we're all valued and loved. None of us has to be above or below anybody else, because we're all the same thing. And so if we can begin to recognize our attachment, this also comes from Buddhism, that is the nature of all suffering, that every form is going to go away and it's going to change. And when we don't want the form to change, we get put out. I just get mad sometimes. Sometimes I get sad. Sometimes I go, this isn't happening. But it's happening. I mean, we've all been at the end of something that we didn't want to end. The life of our beloved parent. Thank you, Kiki, for sharing the gifts of your father. My dad died 8 years ago next month, and it's like I just miss him like it just happened today. I didn't want his form to go away because I love being able to hug that man. Now, he had been ill from Alzheimer's for a long time. Somebody told me when he died, it's a sad blessing. That's exactly right. I'm not saying that we get happy when the forms that we love go away, when the marriage ends, when the job ends, when our physical abilities change. I'm not saying we get happy about it. But when we're in resistance to it, we suffer. And so the point of this bad news portion of today's message is that you suffer because of your resistance. And we all do it. We all do it. We suffer at the nature of the world. I'm not going to get political, but I am going to speak to what's been happening in Springfield, Ohio for just a moment. The demonization and the dehumanization of the immigrant community is wrong. I'm not going to talk about any candidates or any political party, but that thing that is happening there is dangerous, and it is wrong, and it is absolutely antithetical to what we teach here, that all beings, all humans are made in the image and likeness of God, and we must treat each other with the dignity and respect that that deserves. We try to get what we don't have in this present moment, and we suffer because of that. And we try to hold on to that which we do have, and we suffer. But there's good news coming. Let's go to what Jesus of Nazareth had to say about it. This comes from the Sermon on the Mount, as it's recorded in the book of Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, and all the biblical scholars agree that these are probably the most, that keeps happening. I'm not sure what that is, but these are probably the best translation, obviously, of the words that Jesus of Nazareth, that amazing soul, taught 2,000 years ago. This comes from chapter 6, starting with verse 19. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in. For where your treasure is, there is your heart also. And that's one section. This next section doesn't sound like it's related, but it is. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be filled with light. But if your eye is unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great the darkness. In this passage alone, I can make a pretty good case that Jesus was a non-dual teacher. He and Buddha didn't meet, but they were tapped in some of the same strains of the eternal perennial truth that is just, it just is. Years ago, there was a teaching that of the four kingdoms of consciousness, or the four stages of consciousness. Michael Beckwith taught it, and these other teachers I knew taught it, and I was like, who made that up? And so I had a friend who worked with one of these other teachers, said, can you ask her who got that first, you or Michael Beckwith? And Marcia's response was, honey, it just is. It's like it's just laying there on the sidewalk. It just picked it up. It's true. I have another friend who studied with a Hindu teacher for many years, and that teacher told her, kick the truth. If it stays down, it wasn't true. Isn't that good? Well, Jesus is telling us here that if we place all of our worth and value in the form, it will pass away. Moths and rust and thieves, that's just a way of saying that it's not yours permanently. And if that's where your treasure is, if that's the thing that matters, that's what you value, that's what you seek to create and have in life, you will be disappointed because all form passes away. Everything must change. Tony already sang that sermon. But if we're willing to put, how does it say it here? I love it. Where your treasure is, there is your heart also. This is the good news that Jesus is pointing us to. If we treasure the true, the beautiful, the good, the essential spiritual essence that we are, that other people are, that is here in abundance all around us. If we value and live towards creating more love, more peace, more joy, if that's where our money goes, then guess what? Life becomes full. And this is our unity teaching in a nutshell. That to which you pay attention expands and grows in your experience. And so the second part, when Jesus says the lamp is the light, and the eye is the lamp of the body. And then I looked up this word, if thy eye be healthy. And I grew up with the King James. Anybody know what that word was? If thine eye be, anybody? We need to have some Bible classes around here. If thine eye be single. If thine eye be single, then thy whole body be filled with light. The word in Greek is haplos. Haplos. And it really means good, whole, single. Like talking about having a singleness of purpose, like just pure. There's also in some settings, there's a connotation of generosity about it. But if your eye, if what you're focusing on and paying attention to is whole, you're seeing the wholeness. You're seeing the presence of God in every person you meet. Yes, even that presidential candidate. You begin to see that God is present in all people. God is present in all situations, even the ones that we didn't ask for, we didn't want. It's painful, it's difficult. If we will train our mind to see, our eye to see the good or the potentiality for good in every situation, then our whole being becomes filled with light. But Jesus offers us a caution. And the translation is, if the light in you is darkness, then you're filled with darkness. That darkness is great. This is because we have this little thing called free will. You can choose to believe what Michael God is telling you today, that God's present everywhere, and you can go live that, or you don't have to. You can go right on otherizing. They're the problem. We can get rid of them, we'll be fine. You can go right on just seeing, God's not in that person, God's not in that group, God's not in this condition. You can do that. That's a choice for dualistic thinking. And then I believe what Jesus was teaching us here 2,000 years ago is then you will experience that. That to which you pay attention grows and expands in your consciousness. Where's your treasure? Where are you putting your attention? Are you in fear? Are you in anger? Are you in againstness and opposition? If that's the energy that you're viewing life through, guess what your experience is going to be? I'm preaching hard today. Maybe I shouldn't go away too often. I just come back a little ornery, as my mom would say. But I will tell you, I don't teach you anything that I haven't tried. In my recovery work, we don't try to teach or lay things out. We just share our experience, strength, and hope. And this is my experience. That when I, Michael Gott, have not treasured up the things that are heavenly or divine, but have instead focused on I don't have enough, and why aren't they treating me better? If I focus on that, that's the experience I have. You have a choice. Which brings us to the good news, the last point. This moment is filled with promise for transformation for you. And I don't mean later when you lose 10 pounds or when you have your money right. I mean now. Right now. Not when you find that perfect partner, and I tell you, he doesn't exist. She doesn't exist. I see married people going, that's right. Yep, that's right. It's not about out there. But in here, in this moment, I can begin to deepen my awareness of the indwelling presence of good. And I don't even have to figure out how that gets revealed. I just know that it's here, and it will find a way to reveal itself to you. I'm going to share a little bit of a vulnerable story, and you're like, what else is new? But this one's kind of new, and so feels a little vulnerable for me. But I prayed on it, and it feels like the thing I need to share. We will never stop learning or evolving or growing And so just because I have a divinity degree, and just because I've been in ministry for 15 years, and because I do actually practice these teachings, I do pray and meditate, I'm still growing. I'm still healing. My false beliefs that were conditioned into my mind at a young age are still here. And occasionally, life will cooperate and give me a great gift of having them all right here in front of my face. It happens. So recently, I was aware that there was a pattern that I couldn't quite put my finger on in my life, but it came about at the end of a couple of really significant relationships, a long-time friendship and a partnership. And then I began to feel there's this thing that was happening in a lot of places, and I could just tell there's something in my unconscious mind that is creating this in my experience. So I went to a dear friend and a mentor, and I asked her to facilitate a process, which I have facilitated for many of you, called Fear to Faith, which is designed to help us get underneath the condition to what is the belief that's driving us. And it took me back to when I was 3 years old in a moment with my mom. And this is psychologists agree that if it's not one thing, it is your mother. Because she's the one. At least grew up in a traditional home. My dad worked 2 and 3 jobs, and my mom took care of us, and she was with us all the time. And my mom is a wonderful human being, and I love her. So much good is in my life because of who she is. But I was taken back to a time when I was 3 years old, and I'd had an accident. Do y'all know what that is? Boys are sometimes hard to potty train. I had one, and my mother is screaming at me in the bathroom. And I'm terrified. I just don't know how to handle this energy at 3 years old. I don't know what it's about. And most of my life, I've been scared of angry people. And I've done a lot of work on this. And I've learned how to stand in a room with somebody who's angry with me. And I know how to do that. But there was still more work to be done around this. And at the end of that process, when you can name the false belief, my mouth is getting dry. I really am feeling kind of vulnerable. You can name that belief, and the belief that I named is that I am damaged. And the people I love reject me because I'm damaged. And for 57 years, I had been carrying that around unconsciously. And when I had the opportunity to bring it into consciousness, I was left with a spiritual practice called a releasing prayer, and it has a body prayer that goes with it. It goes like this: I release my belief in rejection. I release my need to feel damaged. I'm grateful God is the joy I am. And the instructions for this particular practice called Fear to Faith is you then say and do that body prayer 70 times a day for 7 days. Remember when Jesus, somebody asked him, how many times am I supposed to forgive? 7 times? That's what the law says. Jesus said, I say 70 times 7. Do you know why those numbers are significant? Because it's a lot. It's a really big number to do this forgiveness work, to do this integration work. Practice doesn't make perfect, but practice heals. But you got to do the practice. So I'm walking along Buffalo Bayou Park in the morning, and I'm doing counting them up. And it began to soften. And this is why I was a little vulnerable sharing them, because I feel like I'm still in that process, but I will tell you, I'm feeling different. I feel different. Another gift of this experience was that now that I have some what's the word I'm looking for, perspective. My mom was 29 years old with 2 kids at home whose mother had just died of cancer. She was overwhelmed and grief-stricken. And of course, it makes sense that she lost her cool with her beloved child. And I tell you, I have no unforgiveness towards her at all. But the work is mine to do, to see what this belief is and unwind it and let it go. And I know it sounds like this may not be as good a news as you were hoping for, but it's really good news. Wherever you're feeling stuck or broken or frustrated with life isn't what you think it should be or can be, It can change if you are willing to change. I say it a lot. I've been working on myself for 31 years in this, no more than that. I started therapy at 19, so almost 40 years I have been doing work on self-growth and healing. Been in this teaching for 31 years doing it. Doing it in recovery for decades now. I joke that I'm a really quick study except about anything that matters. I learn really slowly. I want to share with you a quote that I got this week. I was listening to a podcast with the amazing Franciscan priest, Richard Rohr. He was being interviewed. He's still writing. He's no longer a practicing priest, but here's what he said. Did I not put it in here? I know where it is. One second. Maybe. Okay. Thank you for your forgiveness of my imperfection. Got it. Nope. Now I got it. Here's what Richard said. Great things can only be understood gradually. Nothing great comes all at once. And this is the wonderful gift of time. It allows us to absorb it. So I'm a slow learner, but I'm so grateful for that. I love all of it. Right in this moment, there's no other community I'd rather be a part of. There's no other work I'd rather be doing. I love my life, and it ain't perfect. But here is the good news. Like me, if you're willing to continue to look at your stuff, to reach out for some help, and to do these practices, freedom is yours. And then the changes of life are no longer anything to be resisted, but something to be celebrated. I'm going to close before we go into the prayer with my favorite new short little poem by John O'Donohue. It's called Fluent. I would love to live like a river flows, carried by the surprise of its own unfolding. Will you pray with me? And so we flow in life. I think about that little Pentecostal church where I would go with my granddad, and they would talk about the movement of the Holy Spirit falling upon the church, and people being moved to tears and laughter. When we're rigidly in our attachment, we can't feel that flow of the surprising river or the benevolent Spirit. And so in this moment, what I know is that we are trusting the flow of life's wisdom and abundance. Our human eye can't always see where it's coming from, but we can trust that we will be supported by this flow of life's energies and creativity. So I speak my word for every person within the sound of my voice, that they begin to trust the life of God within them to lead the way. That they begin to deepen in this understanding of oneness, of our connection to each other, and make decisions and take actions and speak words that come from this loving, honoring, centering place. And this community becomes a beacon, a lighthouse, a city on a hill that cannot be hidden, because we as a community support each other in this work of healing and evolution and growth. And we shine. Not out of ego or arrogance, but we shine out of the gratitude of having been set free of our limited thoughts. And so I bless all of us in this work, this holy work we do alone and in community. And trust that we are, as Jesus told us we are the light of the world. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. I went a little long. You shouldn't let me out of the pulpit 3 weeks again. I love you so much. If no one has told you today that they love you, I love you. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.